In this final week, the operation management chapter, we're going to talk about the waste management. Continuation from the last week, we were talking about the climate change, eco-friendly environment for the operation or any industry that can be sustainable for the human um, benefits and as the organization to play their important part in the earth healthy and safe environment for every individual. It is important that the organization take their responsibility as corporate social responsibility rather to take care for sustainable development, covering the environmental, social, and economical factors. So the waste management is one of the core areas, especially when we think about production, manufacturing, and we think about lean production. In particular, we are thinking how the organizations can be more efficient and effective in their production. So waste management in production and operation management context, any industry waste or scrap consists of spoiled raw material, rejected component, for example, or any defective part. That's waste which comes from the production. We need to think how the environment or the earth can be safe for sustainability taken in consideration for the corporate social responsibility and how waste can be managed. So this is the discussion we're going to continue in this session. So as usual, we ask the same question as per the topic of our discussion, and today we are going to ask the same question: what exactly we mean by waste management. In this slide we can see waste management includes the activities and action required to manage waste from its inception to its final disposal. So we know that how the recycling of waste becoming important part of our daily life, both in domestic but also in commercial context. This waste management basically includes the collection, transport, treatment, and disposal of the waste, together with monitoring and regulation of the waste management process. So in simple words, we can put it simply: waste management is basically the disposal of waste created by any business or businesses in any country or any region, including transportation, recycling, and waste equipment that is used or hired. It is far more than just supplying and collecting bins. However, it often involves ongoing consultancy and environmental friendly discussion. So when we think about how the disposals or the waste for any periodic period, how waste can be categorized. So we know there's an obsolete, surplus or scrap item in the manufacturing or production of running any business, particularly when we think about the manufacturing and we think about the plant for production. So when we say obsolete item, they are those material and equipments which are not damaged and which have economic worth but which are no longer useful for any organization or the company day in day out operational activities. That is one of the or group of the items. It can include the product line, processes, material, and so on. So if they are obsolete, they are not anymore in the useful. They're not useful for the organization, or they're no longer useful for the company. So they can be considered as waste, but they're obsolete items. The second category is surplus items. These are those material and equipment which have no immediate use for the organization but have a cumulative due to the faulty planning, for example, or forecasting and purchasing. However, they have a use, maybe in future they have a value, but not currently. So they are just quite surplus items that if they remain there, so it is taking or the resources to be used, or they're gonna take space, or gonna be ongoing cost for the organization. And the third category is all the scrappage. So anything that is scrap, which is defined as the process of wastage, discarded material. Particularly, they can be small pieces, discard or removed item from the services. So we need to take care of all these different categories of waste management. So one of the interesting the approach used in Japan, they call it Moda, Mora, and Muri. So this is the three words, 3M, used for the waste management within the Japanese approach by Don Do, the Toyota production system, and later on the concept of lean, which was developed around the eliminating all the different types of, you can say maybe three fundamental types of deviations, or that shows the inefficient allocation of resources. So any production, for example, in Toyota organization, they have identified by Duan Du, who was thinking that how the production system can take in consideration the waste management, and all the products are without much defect or error, and there everything is coming with the more efficiency. So the three types are introduced as the Moda, Mora, or Muri. So as we can see in this slide, that waste, unevenness, or overburden is basically the three words they use in Japanese. The terms Moda for waste, Mura for unevenness, or Muri for overburden. That means that the any kind of the synonym for 3M, three terms often they are used together as the production. For example, within the Toyota production system, they use these 3Ms collectively to describe the wasteful practices to be eliminated. So how they can do a more efficient and effective operation management practices. For example, Moda is any activity that consumes resources without creating value for the customer. So how that can be considered to take the right action. So managing the processes for continuous improvement, we can see that how the Deming approach can be applied here for APDC cycle, which we discussed earlier, that the action needs to be taken, but most important, what is being planned, then you do it and then review and check if that is really working. So waste management, we have different types of waste, though we can apply the approach for lean production, for example. But when we say Moda, Mora, and Muri, they are Japanese words conveying three causes of the waste, and they believe that Moda is basically the activities in a process that are wasteful because they do not add value to the operations or to the end consumers or customer. And Mura basically is the term used the lack of consistency or unevenness that results in periodic overloading of staff or equipment or any resources. And then Muri means the absurd or unreasonable. It is based on the idea that unnecessary or unreasonable requirement that put on a process which will result in a poor outcome. So that is very interesting to understand that how these terms can be applied. These three causes of the waste are related to each other. Inconsistent process, that's Mora, leads to overburdening the resources, which is Mori, and that will cause non-value adding activities, that's Moda. So very interrelated, and we can find the solution for this problem with the Japanese idea, the terms they are used to see the unevenness or the unreasonable burden, or for example the wasteful activities which is not giving or adding any value for the end consumer. Though they're interrelated, we have to see the different types of the waste. So 7 types of waste are quite prominent. So waste activities consume, of course, extra time, resources, cost, or as well as space, but do not contribute to satisfying the consumer needs or to meet their expectations end of the day. So for that reason, we are looking at what are these 7 types of waste and how we can manage them. So we know there will be extra time, delays, transportation, for example, overproduction, and there's a defect or flows, stock, overstocking, and the processing as well as the movement. There are 7 types that we can take in consideration when we do waste management. Overproduction can be one of the main cause for waste, and then waiting time, transport, over processing, inventory, again as we discussed earlier, movement or motion, and defective inspections or detected items. So we basically trying to see the waste can be defined as any production activity that utilizes resources but does not add any value for the end users or consumer or even the owner of the business. So when speaking about waste, lean expert usually refer to these 7 different types of waste management. Specifically, they are thinking that these include the transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, over processing, over production, and defect or defected items, for example, or services. So overproduction and waiting time, for example, when we say overproduction, producing more means that you exceed the customer's demand, which lead to additional cost. Actually, overproduction triggers the other 6 wastes to appear. Reason is that the excess products or waste require additional transportation, excessive motion, and that's also be extra cost, greater waiting time, and so on. So avoiding overproduction by making things only as quickly as the customer want. So that's interesting that we again thinking to apply JIT approach, just in time. So making more than is required by the customer, or to make it earlier than they are required. So going to be again additional cost for managing and looking after. Example, taking multiple copies of the document which are not required is just waste of resources. Waiting time, for example, that is any delays between when one process step activity ends and the next activity begins. If there is a bottleneck, delays or waiting time, that going to be again the waiting time, again along with the overproduction, is the type of you can say waste management key or fundamental type, where we have to be more careful with the lean approach here, because overproduction refers to producing too much or too much of the any product or service that's not even required or needed in certain period of time. So overproduction causes waste on the upfront by overutilizing resources before the product is even produced or it is required or demanded in the market. So we need to think the waiting time is another type of the waste. We have to be careful that how we can avoid any bottleneck or wait or delays. The example is waiting for a manager to approve an application, and if it takes ages, then the opportunity will be lost, and then this is quite crucial or critical for the business point of view, and the operation has to be agile to take or grab the opportunity. Otherwise, this is going to turn into a threat for the business. The next type is the transport and over processing. So transportation waste involves moving inventory, for example, people, different vehicles, machinery, tools, or other items. The more often or over further distances than is if they are not even required, or unnecessary movement of these items. So the excessive movement can lead to the product damage, unnecessary work, and sometimes again the exhaustion of the human resources. Example of transport waste include moving, for example, a hospital patient from department to department, or for example sending overstocked inventory back to a warehouse or an outlet store location back forward. That's going to be including over transportation or over processing. So transport, we basically looking for the movement of work between department or offices that does not add the value of the product or services. For example, multiple approval across different department. And then over processing is another key, you can say, problem within the waste management. And here we can see adding more value to a service or a product than they are required or customer want or will pay for. So that's going to be extra work to do without requirement or demand. For example, adding more value to a service or a product than customer want or they are willing to pay for. So over processing refers to doing more work, adding more components, or having more steps in a product or service than what is required or demanded by the customer or they are willing to pay. So when we go to the next category, we can see the inventory and motion. This is another important type, because inventory unnecessary that does not directly fulfill customer need is excessive. Overstocking, for example, piling of the items which are not required, and they should be reduced to a certain level that is supported by the reliability and consistency of the process or value stream. Excessive inventories often is the result to the company producing or holding just in case inventories built or purchased to the protect against production downtime or production delays, poor quality, or other problem. So these other problems need to be addressed so that an organization can reduce inventory. Otherwise, an organization will likely get in trouble by cutting inventories too much if they have not first increased the reliability of the supply chain. So we have to be careful, because it's quite tricky. More material or information on hand than is currently required. For example, 100 application waiting together for the data entry. The backlog. So we need to be more careful how much data is really required in certain period of time. So just in time will be the very right approach. When we see again movement or motion, here the needless movement of people, for example, or human resources, while transportation refer to the movement of work. Motion involves movement of worker at the same time. Example, running to a printer on a different floor of a printout. So how you can minimize the movement and make things more handy. So motion waste include those movement of machines or employees particularly, which are more complicated or difficult than the absolutely necessary. They are not know how to minimize their waste of time and their movement. So this kind of waste can cause harm to equipment, products, or even to the employees within any organization. So we have to think about, again, the next category for defects to avoid any error and do the proper inspection. That is very important. The waste of defects include quality errors that continuously cost to the business, that much more than the expected cost, and that's going to be extra additional cost as each defective product necessitates much more work for replacement, refund, or return. So wasting resources and material at the same time that can lead to even have a brand demarketing or defaming the organization name. And again, you can even lose your customer and they will not be any more loyal. So any aspect of the services that does not confirm the customer need, we have to be careful. For example, incorrect customer detail captured in the system, so that need to be properly inspected, and we cannot afford any error, especially today if we think about DPR, data protection regulation, for some example, which has been implemented since 2018, that personal data protection is the regulation is quite strict, that how we're going to deal with the without we cannot even afford, any business cannot afford to have error with the technological digital data, especially if it's confidential data. So an inspection for report and single defect property or reports that is going to be generated, we provide a report on a completion of any investigation that is required to advise the cause of any defect and necessary work that is necessary to be done at the first place to avoid long-term cost to the organization, or there are going to be serious regulatory penalties on the organization point of view for breaching the data. So cost basically need to be incurred at the beginning, which going to save a lot of money for long term. So typical defects, we have to be taking the inspection as requested to make sure that the product is going in the hand of customers. Either it is a tangible product or is intangible in the form of data or information, has to be properly structured with the proof of the inspection, and there's no chances of defect or error. So we are giving the surety that the product is already been inspected. Otherwise it has to be recycled. So we have to see all these important types of the waste management, including transportation, the movement of different goods or vehicles, machinery, waiting time, over processing, over production, inventory, or any defects. So these are the different categories that we need to take in consideration when we are doing any business for production, particularly in manufacturing plant. So activities for waste categories, we know these are very important, that we have to think of different activities for waste categories, making extra copies just in case. Do we really need to do it? Document movement between departments, how can we minimize this or can avoid or eliminate? Supervisory approval delays, file waiting, for example, is very bureaucratic approach, and then the chances the business will miss the opportunity. You miss the bus, you miss the opportunity. Multiple calls to the customer for same issue will be rather quite annoying and not be even required or necessary, and that's going to be again waste of time and they're going to cost the organization. Incorrect customer address, for example, or any other data for GDPR, for example, the data protection is again very important, that how you take care of the regulation for the individual or any organization, confidential data, and again capturing the additional field in the system, running for the photocopier for different floor or different buildings, or using any other equipment or machinery, and then again incorrect processing of any kind of accounts or salary, customer on hold for long, form moving different location. So we can see that these are the different categories that we have just discussed in these bullet points, and we can put them in the earlier we have discussed the different type of waste and how we can manage to avoid overproduction, for managing transportation, reducing or eliminating waiting time, and so on and so forth. So this is all the different categories that we have, different activities in our daily business operations, and we have to be taking the organization to be more productive with efficiency and effectiveness, and that can only be done if the waste management is properly identified and addressed. So we look to the solution, and then we want to find out how the organizations can be more efficient and productive when they deal with the waste management. So we are basically looking to the 5S business model for lean operation. So we know what exactly we mean by 5S. We're going to discuss this today in this graphical illustration. You can see 5S. Basically, you have to think about the Siri, Siton, Siso, Siketusu, and Ishikesuki. This is the Japanese term basically, and we translate it in English: sorting, and then again set in order, shine, and standardize, sustain. So we have to basically see that sort as a city, eliminate what is not needed and keep what is needed. So sorting is one of the key approach in lean operation, where we have to eliminate waste. If we apply the first S among the 5 S's of lean operation, after sort, that is again very important that we have to think about the how we can strengthen and we have bring things in order and in a straight line, so the positioning of the things in which a way that they can be easily reached whenever they are needed, so we make it more handy, and we try to make it more efficient with our processes within the operation. And then we try to use a CISO, which is a shine, keep things clean and tidy. There's no refuse or dirt in the work area, which is both cleanliness, hygiene for health and safety, can also help as the one of the S's of the lean operation. And then of course standardization, that is where we maintain the cleanliness and order to perpetuate the neatness as per the set standards. So among the last of the S's, sustain, we need to think about sustainable development, so develop a commitment and pride in keeping to certain standards. The 5 S's is a system for organizing spaces so work can be performed efficiently, effectively, and safely. This system basically focuses on putting everything where it belongs and keeping the workplace safe for health and safety reason, clean, which makes it easier for people to do their job without wasting time or risking any kind of injury. So we are looking for the lean synchronization as the key solution for waste management, because lean manufacturing, particularly in production, when we say lean manufacturing process to be applied, which is one of the key method for creating a more effective businesses by eliminating wasteful practices and improving efficiency. So the key principle of lean operation is relatively straightforward to understand, that lean synchronization is the fundamental aim of achieving the flow of product and services as described by Slegg in 2010 edition of the operation management book, which is also making it make it able the organization or capable or enhance the capability to deliver exactly what customer want in exact quantities, exactly when they are needing them, the product or services, or exactly where they are required at the lowest possible cost. So more widely referred to a lean, the process of lean or lean production or lean processes of operation has a fundamental principles that focus on improving the product as well as the services based on what customers want and what they value and what they are willing to pay for. So that is quite important to take in consideration, that the lean synchronization is the fundamental objective or key aim to achieve the flow of product and services, which is able to deliver exactly what customer want, exactly the amount of the quantity they want, and at the time when they want it, and the amount they are agreed to pay for. So that's quite important, comprehensive, brief definition for lean synchronization to be applied in the lean operation for waste management. We will continue our discussion, think about the big idea in order to improve efficiency, effectiveness, and profitability, focusing relentlessly on the eliminating all aspects of the manufacturing processes that add no value from your customer's perspective. So based on the article, which is in the last week 12 discussion forum that's hyperlinked, read the article and share your thoughts and ideas. Do read the chapter from your waste management topic in the different section of your core and recommended book.